Kevin, a follow up to what you just said. A lot of there are quite a few writers in at least the blogosphere, not necessarily the reporters of major networks, but the blogosphere saying, they're picking a side in this, and they're either pro union or they're pro ownership. Not a lot of pro ownerships, but a lot of people are pro union and are getting angry about what the owners are doing. They kind of have taken the position of this is an unfair 50-50 split or 51-49 because of the way that they're keeping $500 million off the revenue at first, and the way the value of teams are being represented in the losses and everything. Is the 50-50 and 51-49 actually a fair split if that's what it ends up being, and should we be mad about it if that's what happens?
I mean, I'm going to be obtuse here, and I'm not going to give you a satisfying answer. And not because I don't like you, Zach. I like you immensely. But, look, I think whatever the final resolution is fair by virtue of sort of the market will dictate the final resolution. Now, on a holistic level, I'm sort of sympathetic to the players in the sense that I just believe that people in the labor market should be able to get what they want out of their employers. And I don't want to. I never like to reduce it to, owners want to be saved from themselves, but at the same time, is no one. There's no guaranteed max contract in the NBA. I mean, there's no one has to be offered the mid-level exception. You don't have to pay 32-year-old single-dimensional players, multi-year contracts for $5.5 million per. I mean, nobody's stopping NBA owners from exercising discipline. So on a holistic scale, I tend to be pro-player, not deliberately, and not out of any overriding principle other than free market economics. However, that said, I can't subscribe to that theory and then say, well, it's going to be unfair. No, fair is whatever's agreed upon. I mean, fair is going to be the point where owners and players say, not exactly what I wanted, but that's cool. Let's start.
Right. In a typical labor negotiation, I think you usually can say, okay, these workers are producing this amount. This is the market value, based on other industries. But there's no other industry for the NBA because it's a monopoly. So it's very difficult to say, all right, this is what the industry standard is to get paid because they set the industry standard alone. But I think there is something that happens with a kind of a false equivalency where we feel like we have to present both sides as valid, which is something that also I think is a problem in political reporting, where we say, okay, this is the one side of the issue, this is the other, you decide, instead of saying this issue, this side makes sense, here's why, this side is kind of, for lack of a better word, for lack of a better acronym, BS, because we don't have this information and they're misrepresenting it this way. I think that's something that's been tricky in this lockout is you feel like you have to present both sides even if both sides aren't equally valid.
Yeah, it's the old you're entitled to your own opinion, but you're not entitled to your own facts model,
right?
Which makes it very difficult. You're right. There's certain political issues. I'm a political independent, but one thing that always frustrates me when we're talking about tax policy is the notion that's put forward that a 38% marginal tax rates on the wealthiest Americans will somehow hurt growth. When when you talk to economists on an everyday basis, as I used to, like even the folks who subscribe to supply side have pretty much conceded over the last 10 years, yeah, that was BS. Yeah, that didn't really hold water. Enough data has emerged since the 90s and various economies around the world where, yeah, there's no correlation. You can make a compelling argument that taxation is theft, and I'll entertain that as a philosophical argument. But the notion that, it's going to retard growth, and so that's always a problem, because on one hand, that is the foundational argument of people who say, hey, that's too much for wealthy Americans to pay, you'll stunt growth. So it is. But I do think there are compelling arguments the owners have. I mean, I tend to generally fall, my sympathies at the end of listening and hearing out all the arguments tend to fall kind of what you would characterize as pro-player. But I don't think it's unreasonable for owners to say, hey, we want to create a structure that increases profit. I mean, I think the issue is there are probably teams and markets that shouldn't be there. But let's talk about Ethan. You want to talk about Ethan's thing?
Are you up now?
Real quick. Just based off what you just said about overpaying players, Scott Leedy has a question for you. Have you ever overpaid a mediocre player? It's fun, don't knock it. And you can't mention Ryan Gomes because I love Ryan Gomes.
Let's put it this way. I have run up dinner bills with first dates that clearly have no long-term prospects. And there's nothing more frustrating than that.
You also ran up a dinner bill for tapas in Las Vegas with a bunch of losers that should not have had dinner paid for them.
No, but it was a high-protein meal, and for that, I think we all benefited.